A nighttime standoff outside the U.S. Capitol building in Washington, D.C. National Guard troops were deployed to keep the peace as President Trump's supporters refused to obey a curfew following a day of violence that left 4 people dead. Earlier, a mob had stormed Congress where lawmakers had begun the certification of President-elect Joe Biden's victory. Trump has been accused of egging on the rioters, having spent weeks falsely attacking the integrity of the election. The nation's elected representatives were seen scrambling to crouch under desks and don gas masks while police tried to barricade the building. The storming of the Capitol brought proceedings to an abrupt halt as protesters took over the offices and corridors of one of America's seats of political power. A somber Joe Biden, who's less than 2 weeks away from being inaugurated, said American democracy was under unprecedented assault.
The words of a president matter, no matter how good or bad that president is. At their best, the words of a president can inspire. At their worst, they can incite.
Biden urged Trump to condemn the violence. The president resisted, but did tell his supporters to go home.
I know your pain. I know you're hurt. We had an election that was stolen from us. It was a landslide election, and everyone knows it, especially the other side. But you have to go home now. We have to have peace.
Some of his supporters heeded the call and left, but many more remained on Capitol Hill.
You know, what people have been talking about is just how the police forces and the security underestimated just the aggression coming from these demonstrators. Some call them domestic terrorists, actually. If you look up the definition of domestic terrorism, trying to influence and sway politics through the use of violence. Some people say that it would fit underneath this. But of course, they came in as protesters, things escalated, and they left and were pushed out of the Capitol building as some would call terrorists. And of course, we saw a different reaction from protesters from the Black Lives Matter movement, if you remember, when the White House, the President of the United States walked out of the White House, and it was allowed for law enforcement officers to use tear gas on protesters for the president to walk through the crowd and go into a photo op with a Bible in front of a nearby church. Well, there, they were largely controlled. Tear gas, rubber bullets. On Wednesday, however, are different. And some people say it has to be demographic.
I guess you could say it looked like attempted coup. Of course, it didn't involve the military, but it was an insurrection. It was mob rule. It was complete chaos and anarchy. And this is something that, Trump wanted. I'm sure he even enjoyed watching this because he loves to see people who are loyal to him. In his video that he made to direct to these people to leave the Capitol, he called them very special people. This is something that is not surprising because he has many, many groups of people that he's tried to incite to support him, inciting violence in some ways. And he's been a president that has sowed divisions and created chaos from the very beginning. He's used the office for his own personal gain, and he's tried to create so much disunity in the U.S., and what we're left with is a very, very polarized country. So this isn't surprising, but it's unprecedented. We've never seen anything like this before, and much of it is due to Trump's behavior.
Is what we saw going to define Trump's legacy?
Definitely. This is one big part of his legacy. I mean, we know that the U.S. was becoming increasingly polarized before he took office, but his biggest legacy is that he's made these divisions even worse. He's hardened these divisions. Now we have people who they just can't get along, from the Republicans to the Democrats. You don't have the type of unity that the U.S. had in the past. And a lot of this is because he frames things into us v. them. And he's willing to tacitly at least support this type of violence. And this is really almost a fitting end that just characterizes his entire presidency.
For a majority of people looking at the results of the popular vote, they will have been looking quite forward to the 20th of January. Do you think there'll be a sense of unease and trepidation that these remaining 13 days could see yet more unpredictable events happening in the US until we reach Inauguration Day?
I think we're going to see more violence and more turmoil. I mean, that was just one day. That was the day that it's normally just a procedure, a formality. They're just counting the electors. There really shouldn't be much controversy behind it. I actually thought the inauguration would be the day that would be very, very violent. But I think we can expect that there will be more chaos to come.